This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Welcome to episode 353 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name's Cody Villafana. I'm joined by Kiko Martinez and Jocelyn Duran for this week's slightly belated episode, but better late than never, as I always say. If this podcast still had Jared on it, Jared and I had a really bad habit of talking Spurs basketball for like 20 minutes on this show. And if Jared were here, we would probably be talking about how the Spurs are in the playoffs for the first time in a long time, and the number 2 seed in the West. And there's so much to talk about. Wemby getting hurt, getting a concussion.
How collectively all of San Antonio held their breath for a good 10 seconds when he fell.
Yeah.
And about the fiesta out that they did with the colors on the court and T-shirts. Everybody's been freaking out about that.
Yeah, the very well received, except for Bill Simmons.
I know. Can you believe what a grouch?
Yeah,
like everyone universally adored it, except for him.
That's classic Bill Simmons, though. So
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, he's always has to have a take like that. So, but we're not going to spend 20 minutes talking about it, especially because we're a little late on the show, and we have a busy show. We've got a bunch of movies to talk about, and so I'm sure we'll talk about the Spurs, hopefully, in the coming weeks, as they are sitting tied 1-1 in their series against the Portland Trail Blazers, with Game 3 tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. Central. Why?
Because they're playing the Trailblazers.
Oh, yeah. It's Eastern.
That doesn't,
right?
I mean, still, that's very, very late.
Pacific time zone.
Oh, Pacific, yeah. That's
Yeah.
Right. Sorry.
I'm Eastern. But I'm in Central right now, by the way. I crossed
Oh, really?
the time zone line on my way
Wait,
here.
Florida? I thought Florida's East.
I know,
And
I did too.
But I guess Western Florida.
We're like on the panhandle. We're pretty close to, I drove through Alabama like 10 minutes ago, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's playoff hockey is happening at the same time, and the Dallas Stars had a game last night, and again Central Time Zone. They played Minnesota, who I think Minnesota is also in Central Time, and the game started at like 8:30. It was scheduled to start at 8:30. Actually started at like 8:56. Went into double overtime and ended at 12:56 a.m. last night.
Gee whiz.
Central. So, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know why they're scheduling these things this way, but we won't talk about basketball. We'll talk about movies, and we'll go
After
ahead
just talking about basketball.
Right.
I mean, we kept it to 3 minutes. That's a new record here for basketball talk. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get started.
Here are this week's reviews.
So first up this week, we have Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, Kiko made a big deal last time about the sort of like putting an unknown person at the beginning of their version of a movie. I thought about this a little bit more, and I think the reason why this is Lee Cronin's The Mummy is because they're actually like they're doing a sequel to The Mummy with like Brendan Fraser at some point in the near future, and I think
And Fraser's going to be in it?
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Let me see when that's coming out.
So this was like their way of being like, not that mummy.
Yes, like-
this new one.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is written and directed by Lee Cronin, who, as we said last week, wrote and directed Evil Dead Rise. And it is a movie about a young daughter of a journalist disappearing into the desert without a trace. 8 years later, the broken family is shocked when she is returned to them, as what should be a joyful reunion turns into a living nightmare. So, I mean, I think that, like, in the terms of, like, this being a take on the Mummy, like the sort of, like, traditional thing that people might be thinking about, this is not sort of, like, something that is, like, really even related at all to, like, the Mummy monster. This is very much like a possession movie. Above all else, it is about this little girl who returns and she ends up being possessed. And really the Mummy elements are that, basically she disappears in Egypt and ends up, being found in like a sarcophagus. And really that's like the extent of the connection to the Mummy. It's interesting, right? Because you may be shocked to hear this, Kiko, but I think I'm going to be a little bit of an apologist for this movie because I feel like there are, like, don't get me wrong, this movie is like generic in terms of its storytelling. It's generic in terms of its like possession. And there are some moments in it that I think are like, genuinely bad. Like I think there's some like acting, like shocked acting from like Jack Rayner. Sometimes it's a little bit over the top, and a few things that I don't think work as well. But if you're gonna have a generic movie or a generic story here, I like the least I can ask is that the movie like goes hard at least, and this movie goes hard, and I think that's the thing that I appreciated about it the most. Where like it's pretty like gruesome and graphic. There's a lot of like fucked up things that happen in it. It's like got a mean streak to it, similar to like how like I feel like Evil Dead Rise also had a mean streak to it. And in fact, I think like a lot of the complaints about the movie are that it's like maybe too mean. And I feel like there are things like the movie Jocelyn that we saw, Bring Her Back, I feel like is like too mean, like mean for the sake of mean.
And the kid punches the sibling in the face.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Jocelyn, by the way.
I muted myself.
Yeah, that's fine.
The one with the foster kids, the Australian one? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Where, and Kiko, by the way, it was a blind kid getting punched in the face.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. That's right.
Yeah. So, and, that movie was mean for the sake of mean. And I think in The Mummy, like, there's some characters that are treated pretty poorly. But, like, there's some stuff in this movie that I feel like I've never seen before. Like the fact that, like, there's a character in the movie who like dies, and inside a casket like they get like bitten on the throat and they just start oozing like formaldehyde, and I've never seen that before. Like I've never seen like something like that happen before, where someone is like leaking embalming fluid after getting ripped apart. And like it's stuff like that where I'm like, okay, I appreciate that this movie is at least like going for it. I feel like stylistically it also looks pretty good. I think that the character design of the daughter who comes back is like again genuinely creepy. I think that like the relationship elements don't work as well. I've found it harder and harder to believe that this family is like still like convinced that their daughter is somewhere in there, very far-fetched, the more that she acts like crazy and murderous. But I can't say that I had a bad time with it. I feel like people are being like pretty harsh to this movie, where like this is like, if you're gonna have like studio conventional horror, possession horror, I really appreciate like the lengths that this thing goes to at least be like a little bit shocking and gory and gross out, and I feel like it succeeds in a lot of that. So yeah, I mean, it's not good or great even, or I mean, I should say that the other way. It's not great or good or all that good even, but I think I can be a little bit forgiving because, there's a dozen horror movies that'll come out like this year that will be indistinguishable from one another, and this one at least distinguishes itself by being, pretty brutal. So, Kiko, your thoughts on Lee Cronin's The Mummy?
Yeah, I think you're being a little bit, more accepting of it because you did like Evil Dead Rise, and I can give that credit to you for doing the same thing, but I couldn't recommend Evil Dead Rise either. So I think we're probably on the opposite ends of the spectrum a little bit here. Well, maybe not a little bit. I'm not sure what you're going to end up giving it, but I thought this was a case of like, shameless branding over substance. It's obvious that Warner Brothers and Blumhouse just wanted to take this, one of horror's most recognizable titles and then, ignore almost everything that title brings with it, right? So I don't know, if many moviegoers or how many of these moviegoers are actually going to feel misled going into it. But when I hear The Mummy, I think of, that legacy built, from the original Mummy or some of the old school sequels, the Gothic takes from the Hammer films from the 50s. So, and like you said, this version is just, essentially just an exorcism movie. So instead of like the reinvention of the Mummy story, I could imagine like these marketing experts, in a boardroom making decisions of how to squeeze, $100 million out of something that is very easy to piggyback off. You call it the Mummy instead of calling it the girl in the sarcophagus. You're pulling, you're slapping that name on it, and you're gonna make money, right? So I think Warner Brothers and Blumhouse knew exactly what they were doing, which doesn't rub me the right way when stuff like that happens. But anyway, I digress. I think that Cronin, he did exactly
You're
what he
muted,
did
Jocelyn,
with this.
again.
There's children running around.
Oh,
But is that your title suggestion? Girl in the sarcophagus? Is that what you thought it should
if
be?
it wanted to make $2, it would have gone for that movie, for that title. But it chose the Mummy, and it's probably gonna. Well, what did it end up making? At least 20 million? Because it was a budget of 22 million, so I'm guessing.
You're kind of right. I think I would want to see Girl in Sarcophagus, but Mummy, it's like, okay, no thanks.
Yeah, I'm checking to see what it made this week. I'm having to go back a few days in the. Okay, here we go. 13 million. For the
Okay,
weekend.
so I think probably in the next couple of weeks it'll make its money back. But yeah, and I really am not a fan of Cronin putting his name on it. Like that kind of branding, I think, belongs to established filmmakers. Only a few can get away with it, or at least the very infamous ones too, like Yui Boll or somebody like that. Luckily, it's not as bad as something Yui Boll would make. So, in fact, like Cody said, the one redeeming quality, in my opinion, is the unapologetic gore that's pretty much makes up most of the film. So I think fans of Evil Dead Rise will appreciate that. I like Jack Reiner. I thought he stood out in this, and he stood out in Midsommar too for me. I think he brings this convincing, like, wide-eyed character, like this father.
He's very wide-eyed in this movie.
Who's like in over his head, and like he has this deer in the headlights energy that works well with this. So I think that the gore works if that's what you're into, and then also Raynor's character. So that's where I'm at with Lee Cronin's The Mummy.
Yeah. So we'll jump into final thoughts and grades. And again, like this is this is a relatively generic possession story that is sort of like, it almost feels like retrofitted or as a marketing ploy to tie it into the Mummy, franchise or not even franchise, but like property. And again, there will be a bunch of horror movies like this that come out this year or next year. And I feel like the thing that sets this apart is it's just like, it really hits the gas on a lot of the, sort of like messed up gore elements of it in ways that pleased me and that I enjoyed, some of the brutalness of what you get here. And like I said, I appreciate the commitment to going pretty hard with it. So, you know what? Shockingly, I'm going to be a defender of this movie, and I'm going to give it a B- because I enjoyed the ride. So that's my grade. Kiko, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I think if you just strip away the title and the gore, you're left with another cliche exorcism movie. We get about 2 or 3 of these a year, and that's what's probably going to happen again. I think they're even aren't they remaking The Exorcist again?
Yeah,
with,
Mike Flanagan is making it.
Okay, so it's going back to the very beginning. So anyway, yeah, you have check the boxes off. You have a possessed child contorting their body. You have them crab walking on the ceiling. You have plenty of projectile vomit. I would have liked to have seen more of a Mummy story instead, but I think that this one just unravels, no pun intended, into a big bloody mess. I'm giving this a C.
All right. So then we will go ahead and move on to the next film, Normal. Normal is a film directed by Ben Wheatley, written by Derek Kolstad, who people may know from the John Wick franchise, and starring Bob Odenkirk in a continuation of this stage of his career where he has now become an action star. And it centers on a temporary small-town sheriff who uncovers a dark mysteries after a local bank robbery. So Kiko and Jocelyn, I don't know if you guys have had a lot of experience with Ben Wheatley movies, but this is a director that I've just like never been able to like crack. So the movies that you may know from him are like High Rise and Free Fire. I just in life, there's been some other things that he's made that have been like a little bit more like heady and
Yeah, those are the only two I've seen.
Yeah.
High Rise and Free Fire.
Yeah, and neither of those movies really do it for me, even though I think they're pretty well regarded. And so I went into this movie with like just kind of like knowing that I'm not really a Ben Wheatley person, but intrigued by the fact that it was written by the person who wrote some of the John Wick movies, and it's interesting because I feel like this movie, like, I don't feel like it has a good grasp of tone in a way that I kind of wish it was, because it kind of gives you I think like sort of like Fargo vibes, or at least tries to early on. And I feel like that is sort of like ditched in many ways for just sort of like a generic action movie premise, where like you get the Fargo vibes and sort of like small town sheriff, taking care of like small town crime. You get a little bit of the humor from Bob Odenkirk. There's a funny bit, like I actually did laugh at. There's like this recurring bit about like one of the like deputies like squeaky jacket that I thought was like funny the few times that it happened. But then it starts to like incorporate this like semi confusing plot about like the Yakuza like hiding money inside of this and like a vault in this random town. And then it gets confusing because you start losing, I think, a little bit of like who is against who, and like why people are doing certain things, why the entire town is defending this vault, because basically the entire town shows up, and it kind of turns into the second part of the movie. The violent thing reminded me a little bit of like Hot Fuzz when it turns actiony, where like the entire town turns against it, and like you've got old people fighting and having like weapons and stuff like that. And I think that the movie just feels like needlessly confusing in terms of its motivations. Like, again, I don't understand why anyone here is doing anything. I don't understand why Bob Odenkirk's character is helping these people who are like straight up criminals, and he's like a sheriff. I don't understand why the entire town is like defending the Yakuza here. There's like this really like weak secondary character plot line with like the former sheriff's daughter that I feel like goes absolutely nowhere, and really just serves to like pay off a conundrum that Odenkirk's character gets into. There's some okay like gun battles and like explosions and exploding body parts and stuff like that, but this feels like very run-of-the-mill action movie material that I don't think is elevated much by the presence of Odenkirk. And I don't think, you've got like Henry Winkler and Lena Headey in like secondary roles here that I don't think really add anything to the mix. And like I said, I just feel like the plot gets like really needlessly complicated along the way. So this just, again, wasn't really my jam. I think I liked it more than I've liked other Ben Wheatley movies, but again, like this is, similar to The Mummy, sort of like a dime a dozen sort of like crime thriller that has like I said, I wish it had a little bit more comedy to it. I wish it leaned a little bit into like the Fargo part. I wish that it leaned, even if you have Odenkirk's character who seems, like he doesn't know what he's doing and ends up being like super competent. I don't even think they play into that part. He just is like, a journeyman sheriff, and that's really his only character. You have like some things about like him being separated from his wife or something like that, but not a whole lot of character beats here that really pay off in any way. So yeah, I'm pretty meh on this overall. Jocelyn, why don't you give your thoughts on Normal?
Yeah, I thought it was extremely like perplexing. I had no idea. Like, it's like 3 different movies in one. And like you said, it starts off like with this kind of like a Fargo type of sort of feeling. And then it sort of pivots away to this action movie, and that's it. It's like nothing that it had done previously ever comes up again, and then it sort of pivots again. And I was like, what am I watching? Also, I feel like maybe they had an interesting movie in here somewhere, and then like they got some notes that it needed like more action or something. That's kind of how it feels, like kind of bipolar. Bob Odenkirk is always great, but I think you're right that they could have leaned on him more, and it could have been like in a very funny way, and even in like a darkly funny way, and it just doesn't do anything with that. And I'm leaning more on like not liking it, just because it really felt completely disjointed, and like I said, just sort of like bipolar, like completely different things going on. And once the movie goes in a different direction, the one that you had been previously watching and like trying to engage with, or like, you know, get anything from, it's like that movie's just gone, and now it's like this new thing. So I just did not like this movie at all.
No. And Kiko, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, both of y'all hit the nail on the head as well. For me, I think there's a version of this film that could have been like a lean, like snowy crime thriller / dark comedy, you know, about small town corruption that might have been like right at my alley. But I don't think it reached those Fargo-esque ambitions that it might have had. So I thought Bob Odenkirk was fine. His trademark, you know, presence is what kept this film a little bit more afloat for me. I think when he's playing that, he's underplaying his scenes. You know, he's this ordinary guy. He brings that kind of style into those scenes. I think that's what that kept me interested at least a little bit. So I like the choice of setting the story in Minnesota. I mean, the isolation, I think, of that suggests we're going to get something like Fargo, even though it never really gets there. So, but there's still something unique, I thought, about, you know, the imagery, especially since I hadn't gotten to experience like a shootout in the snow in a while. I thought that was kind of interesting and cool. But I think, like The Mummy, I think the violence mostly delivers in this. There's like a handful of well-staged kill scenes that felt grounded, especially because they don't make these small town cops. They aren't turned into like these cliche, like cartoonish, like Keystone Cop guys, which I thought made it a little bit more believable. So, but yeah, I thought ultimately where it lost me was the secondary storylines with the daughter, and then especially with the Japanese Yakuza. That narrative for me was completely unnecessary. It felt just like padding.
Yeah.
I think the story would have been a lot stronger if it had stayed local and just focused on the townspeople. And I took a couple of notes about Ben Wheatley too. I think, you know, he does these creative and effective shootouts, and like he did in Free Fire about a decade ago. So that's basically where this film ends up. At the last 30 minutes. Or the last 30-minute stretch is just basically gunfire. So that lost my interest right away. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah. So we'll get into final thoughts and grades, and again for me, just, you know, a needlessly confusing narrative that that tries to incorporate too much outside, you know, B, C, D level stories that again, like, needlessly complicated. It's hard to follow and track motivations, and what could have been like a black comedy that turns violent ends up being just like, you know, a sort of you know, uninteresting movie that has a shootout at the, you know, in the final act of it. So, you know, for me, this never really you know, like, leaped off the screen. I think that it's not terrible. Like I said, it's not the worst Ben Wheatley movie I've seen, but not really for me. I'm giving this a C+. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I think Far from Fargo is the tagline here. I think, I don't know what it was doing. I don't know how this movie got made. I don't know how it got people, the people that are attached to it. I'm a thumbs down on all of it. I'm giving it a C-.
Okay. And Kiko.
Yeah, for me, the best parts of it is when Odenkirk is playing this underestimated cop, and then plus some of the violent scenes work. But it keeps undercutting what I thought was his strongest idea, which is a story about a small town greed, which in my opinion wasn't explored enough. So I am giving this a C.
Okay. So we'll get into our next film, The Christophers. So The Christophers is a movie about the children of a once famous artist who hire a forger to complete some unfinished, long ago abandoned canvases, so they'll have an inheritance when he dies. It is a film that is directed by Steven Soderbergh and written by Ed Solomon, who has worked with Steven Soderbergh before. He wrote No Sudden Move, but he's also written a number of other basically like comedy adjacent movies. He wrote Men in Black, the original. He wrote Now You See Me, the first one, or co-wrote it. And yeah, so this is like kind of like the definition of a frustrating movie for me, because I feel like this is a film that is constantly taking like a step forward and then a step back. And I felt really frustrated by the narrative, because I think the first thing that it does really well is like it presents, through the conversation of the aforementioned like children of the artist, it presents Ian McKellen as like this like feeble dying man, and then once you're introduced to him, you realize that he's like still super sharp mentally. And what that allows for is for Ian McKellen to give what I think is like the best performance of the year so far, where I think he is like so locked in this movie. He is so good. He's delivering like these really like lengthy monologues, and he's like acting his ass off. Like he's very, very, very good in this movie. And I think just like it's a super captivating performance, especially as he, again, like he not only like is sharper than he seems, but also there's a scene where you can tell that he kind of like plays up his feebleness to his kids as part of it. And like, he's playing this artist who, has kind of been coasting for a long time, and has, is basically like doing cameo videos to make money, but, has kind of like sworn away art and finishing this series of paintings. And I feel like, and so I really like that angle that it kind of plays into, where, he subverts expectations with his character. And then when you get Michaela Cole, who shows up, like that is a great sort of like back and forth thing, where she's also like downplaying certain things, and then eventually he is able to kind of sniff some stuff out, and you get like some really interesting like dynamics between the two of them, who kind of are acting in most of these scenes. Like the majority of the movie is the two of them together, and I think that they have really good chemistry. Michaela Cole is really good too, though I think like McKellen is like the pure star of the movie. And I also feel like the movie kind of like starts to take off when they start to like I said, it like reels you in and then like lets go, because you sort of get this idea of like, oh, she's gonna prove himself to him, and then no, not really. And then you get these moments where like, oh, they're going to work together to scheme against their kids, and then it's like, no, not really. And like, so it keeps on like grabbing you and releasing you a little bit. And the thing that's the most frustrating about it is that I really, really do not like the way that this movie ends. I feel like it ends very abruptly. I feel like it ends somewhat confusingly, and I feel like it ends way too neatly. And it feels like the last like 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, it's like, oh shit, we have to end this thing, and like they just wrote themselves out of it. Because I feel like the movie like starts to get intriguing narratively, and then the movie just like ends, right? It has like an anti-conclusion. And so that's the thing that kind of bugged me the most about it, is that like it's just like a little bit too give and take with the narrative, where I feel like every time that I locked into it, I had to like back away from it a little bit. But that doesn't take away from the performances, which I feel like are pretty stellar, especially McKellen. So Kiko, I will turn to you for your thoughts on the Christophers.
Yeah, I had no idea what this was about. And it's always great when you go into something like this and you haven't read anything, you haven't seen a trailer, you know that there's some good people behind it. I mean, I'm a big Steven Soderbergh fan. And I'm going to have to say, I'll check my list again. I haven't checked it, but like top 5 Steven Soderbergh films, I think this is going to be very close. It might be like at 6 or 7. But I really like this movie a lot. I thought it felt both controlled, and this strong emotional center is what really captivated me between these two characters. The two leads, especially Ian McKellen. I mean, what he brings to this role. I mean, if Christopher Plummer can win an Oscar for Beginners, McKellen better get nominated for this. And I'm just worried that it's too early in the year for people to remember, but he's so good in this. Like, and it's definitely easily the best performance that I've seen this year. So, I think Soderbergh, overall, I thought he, these carefully, I wasn't bothered by the pull and like the pull and release of some of the twists. I didn't think they felt gimmicky. I can understand how some people might feel a little frustrated with them. I thought it kind of reframed what you were thinking or hoping or understood about the characters and their motivations. So I kind of I understood that and liked it. So I also like some of the secondary characters. I thought James Corden in particular, he turns in a performance that plays like directly into his strengths, or what I think are strengths, is that in that he's obnoxious. So, I think it's a role that could have easily gone a little bit too broad, but I think he grounds it in realism here. So, but again, I mean, just Ian McKellen, man, I could watch that guy all day, and he does a great job. I think stylistically it felt good it's not a Soderbergh movie, I guess, if you want to call it something like that. There's not any flashiness from some of his experimental films, but it has some great emotion, and I think that Soderbergh is operating like at a peak level right now with I didn't love Black Bag as much as most people did, but it was a solid film. So I think that 2 years removed from that, he comes in strong again. So I think it's one of his strongest recent films. Really smart. So
okay. And Jocelyn, your thoughts?
I'm really glad to hear that you said that you really liked the performance, both of you, because Cody messaged me when he was watching it and was like, Ian McKellen is acting, like in all caps, like capital A acting. And I was like, yeah. And then I looked back and I was like, oh, I hope he doesn't mean that like I hope he doesn't like think it's overacting, because I really enjoyed the performance. So I was like waiting to hear if it was too much or what. So I'm glad to hear that both of you liked it, because it was, I thought, incredible. I also really love how he kind of toes the line between being like this really charming asshole. Like he's very good at like, it's sort of like in the Hugh Grant way, where they're just like curmudgeons, but like in a very charming way. So he's just likable. And then I really love Michaela Cole. I've loved her since I saw her first show, Chewing Gum. I haven't seen I Might Destroy You, but it's like on my list of things that I know I'm going to love, and I'm just, waiting to find time to do it, because I really honestly feel like she's kind of the perfect person to be against his huge performance. Like she is so calm and like strong against it, and I just like get goosebumps, because I've been a big fan of hers like for a long time. So to see her in this role, I was really excited, and I just really love like the little relationship that they form. What else did I want to say about this movie? I took notes. I guess I will say the last thing is the only thing. Oh, I also was surprised that it was Soderbergh. I thought it was like a British director, honestly. And then when I was like, who did this? And I looked up and it was Soderbergh. I was like, that's bizarre, because I'm not a huge Soderbergh fan, and Cody knows that. I have hated some of his movies, and then even his best ones, I'm like, they're okay. I think he's okay. I think this, like you said, Kiko, may be one of his like top 5. I just think it's very genuine. I think it's interesting that he chose London as an American filmmaker. And then the last thing I wanted to say was, the only thing I wish was that it wasn't such a scene movie, like where it could have been like a stage performance. It's like very much in room. I wish they had like gone out and done something. I know that sounds dumb, but I wish that they had like gone and done something together. Like there's that really good French movie called The Untouchables, where the guy's a paraplegic and the guy like and I wish there had been like one like kind of dumb fun moment between the two, just to kind of cement it all together in my heart.
Were they going on an adventure?
Yes, exactly. Like she's pushing him in a shopping cart or something, I needed that. That was like my one complaint about this movie, but the rest of it.
So there was no field trip. So
yeah,
exactly. I needed one field trip.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into final thoughts and grades. And for me, a frustrating narrative that is sort of like counterbalanced by an incredibly great lead performance from Ian McKellen here, who, I feel, like I said, gives the performance of the year so far. And just what the performance reminded me a little bit of is like Anthony Hopkins in The Father. To me, that was it's like a similar performance there, where he's just like kind of like weaving in and out of different things and going into these monologues and like maybe a little bit mumbly at times and very expressive. Just like a really great dialed in performance of that's like, again, not like the easiest dialogue in the world either, that he's like just kind of like really eating up. And like I said, I was just kind of like found myself frustrated because every time I found myself like really, really interested in what was going on in the narrative, or like it takes an interesting turn, I feel like it doesn't stick with it long enough. And then I feel like, again, it just has like this anti-ending that I really didn't care for. So for me, I'm giving it a B minus. It's a good movie that I feel like had it ended a little bit better, could have been an easy B for me, but ultimately a B minus. And so Kiko, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I think overall it left an impression on me. I was thinking about it a couple of days still later, just because of the performance that Ian McKellen brings. I mean, he's a standout. He's a standout, and just this remarkable, really dramatic lift that he has to do with this. And I thought he brought a genuine, what's the word? Like a genuine warmth without getting overly sentimental. So I really like that, and I think there's just some great chemistry there between the two leads. So, and then there's just the direction itself is just effortless. I think Soderbergh is at the top of his game with this one. So I'm giving this a solid B.
All right, and Jocelyn.
Yeah, I really think it's also, like Kiko said, the chemistry between the two. I think that they balance each other really well. And I really never expected to see these two actors in this movie and this type of a movie. And I'm just like really happy that it happened. And like Kiko also said, it's like you go into these movies and you are like, okay, what is this? I haven't read anything. And then to get like a little treat like this was really nice. And I definitely recommend it. So I'm going to do a B.
All right. So now we will get into our final film, Mile End Kicks. Mile End Kicks is a film about a 24-year-old music critic who gets romantically involved with members of an indie band as she decides to publicize, which is an interesting sort of IMDb plot, because really this movie is kind of like centered around this music critic who moves to Montreal for a period of time to basically write a book about Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. A plot point that like serves no real purpose, too much to my chagrin. I am frustrated by the fact that this serves as kind of like a simple narrative device that doesn't like tries to put in like a couple of paragraphs about the relevance of that album and then just sort of like, does away with it as a
I was
plot.
hoping that they were going to do something cool, like get her to run into her at some party or something. That would have been cool.
I was hoping something cool would happen for the duration of this movie, and I feel like nothing really did. So, the movie. This is sort of a movie that feels like a coming of age movie that I feel like you've seen 1,000 different times. Specifically with like a coming of age movie where like a character, and in many cases it's like a girl, acts like really stupid and self-sabotages, and is oftentimes about a boy that does it to her. It's sort of like, like the movie that always sticks out to me that like I did not like, but encompasses this is like The Edge of 17. Like that movie with like Haley Steinfeld, where like it's like, these characters who just like act like assholes for 2 hours and then like learn something at the end of it.
What's that one movie that everybody loves with Zach Braff? Remind me.
Garden State?
Garden State, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
I have a love-hate relationship with that movie.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think everyone does.
So I mean, I found myself like frustrated by the fact that this movie doesn't seem to deliver much on its premise, where again, like you see like it's framed around like Jagged Little Pill as like a feminist sort of like message and a powerful thing, and I feel like the movie like it doesn't even relate to it thematically, really. Like it's just like like the loosest of connections, and I found myself frustrated by building a movie through that narrative lens and then not doing anything with it, really. Like, again, aside from showing her writing like a couple of paragraphs about
like literally not doing anything with it. Like she doesn't even do anything with it. It just makes no sense.
I know, and it's really frustrating for me. The other thing that I feel like this movie can't really ever get right is the love triangle that establishes here, where she is sort of like romantically interested in one member of a band who is like unavailable to her, so she goes for this other member of the band who is sort of like the lead singer, and he's kind of like vapid and like fake deep and stuff like that, and ends up having issues with him. And I feel like there's not enough chemistry going on between anyone here, and I feel like for this story to really work, she needs to have chemistry with like the nice guy of it, the Archie character in this movie, and it's almost like he is like completely uninterested in her until he is as part of the movie, where in their interactions they seem totally platonic and like nothing really like there's just like no chemistry that I feel between any of these characters, and the love triangle never really feels like it's all that complicated or complex. Even between like the two guys, like there's not a whole lot of like, you know, arguing or sort of like fighting over her or anything like that. It's just sort of like there. And I think there's several points in this movie that I just found myself like very, very bored. Like there's stretches in this movie where I feel like nothing is happening. Like there's a stretch where like, you know, she's just like hanging out at the house. She's trying to write. Then she goes to this like poetry reading, and then she like hangs out and goes to a party. And it's just like incredibly uneventful as part of it. So I did not find myself charmed by the movie. I feel like it fails as a romantic triangle. I feel like it fails as a as sort of like a coming of age movie, because I think it's so generic, and I think that like the sort of like Alanis Morissette of it all is like, why even frame it around that if you're not going to do anything with it, you know? Especially because I feel like that is like an interesting thing where like there's literally like two Alanis Morissette needle drops in the movie, and like that's the extent of it. So yeah, not really a huge fan of this one. Jocelyn, your thoughts on Myland Kicks?
I'm going to quote the Virgin Suicides and say, Doctor, you've never been a 13-year-old girl before, because this was like...
She's like 24.
Well, that's just the quote from the Virgin Suicides.
Okay.
So I'm quoting it specifically, but just fill in the blank of like being you've never been a 20-year-old, you know, young woman before, because like this spoke to my elder millennial heart. I was around the same age during this time. I have made questionable decisions about gentlemen in my life, including maybe one that I'm currently married to, but I think... I think it had a lot of charm. It reminded me, I don't know, it reminded me of like New Girl. Like it was very adorkable. And I thought that her and Archie had a lot of chemistry. I was rooting for them, of course, because that was like the main point of the movie. I think their walk home after that night was great. I think they had a lot of chemistry together. I thought it was very funny to see her continuing to pick this like insane and vapid and mean lead singer, because who hasn't in their life? I'm telling you, I think that this is just, you know, the difference between being able to relate as a girl, and especially around this time. I just think it was like really speaking to me, and I didn't care that they never got back to the Alanis Morissette stuff. I agree that they definitely dropped it, but I didn't care. I liked it.
All right, and Kiko.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out who this was made for, and now I guess it's Jocelyn. Jocelyn Duran. I kept thinking maybe I needed to live in Montreal like 15 years ago to understand like the nostalgia or that particular subculture, but I mean, you know, but halfway through I was just like, okay, I'm not sure where this is going. So I thought the film really wanted to be like this offbeat coming of age story, but it's hard to get behind any of it because everybody's so unlikable. And maybe that's the point, but I think there should be a limit, right? Like from the start, we're presented with like these emotionally stunted 20-something-year-olds who are stumbling through their lives. But I was completely indifferent to what any of them were going through. And it's because I just thought all of them had these grating personalities. So it became difficult for me to invest in any of them when all you want is for them to get hit by a bus. So I think that Barbie Ferreira, I think she did a good job in acting. I mean, with the script she's giving, you know, but these two romances that she's in, they didn't develop into anything that was interesting to me. Like I thought they were underwritten, and like all the quirkiness about them. I think we talked about that, but you know, it just becomes exhausting for me. So, and that's what I think you get from like the entire ensemble as a whole. Like you know, they're replacing these eccentric characters with, you know, with just these they were replacing eccentricity, I guess that would be the would be the adjective for it, for real characterization. So I thought it was never charming to me. Particularly bad was the actor Stanley Simmons as Chevy. I hated that character. I'm sure he's a good actor, but here the performance just feels like directionless. Like I had no idea what he was trying to do with him. So this was for me easily the worst thing I saw of the week. So
Oh, wow, interesting. Yeah, so we'll get into final thoughts and grades. And again, like this is like your typical sort of like indie twee bullshit that I just like. It feels like an affectation more than a very like honest, authentic depiction of sort of like this, and especially like, again, like framing it. I know I've hit this point a few times, but like framing it around this like Alanis Morissette album, feels like it's like very try-hardy, and I feel like the movie just feels like an indie try-hard thing that never really leaps off the ground. I don't buy into the love triangle here, and also this character. Again, like goes on an arc that you can see in any like coming of age movie out there, where again a character is just like obliviously an asshole, and then ends up messing up their own lives, and then trying to put back the pieces together. So to me, this doesn't stand out, and I never really found myself charmed by it. So I'm giving it a C. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I think a glass of rosé, and if you're like of a certain age, I wrote down the tagline. It's a hipster rom-com for the elder millennials, especially women, because it just like checked all my boxes. I didn't, of course, spend time in Montreal during this time, but I feel like it was a universal experience, and especially I was kind of like in this like area of like, oh, I wrote with BMI, and I was like, there was so much, I had so much potential, and you're in your 20s, and you're just like making bad decisions, and I don't know, I really loved it, and I wouldn't say it's a good movie though. That's like, I'm not saying it's a good movie. I really loved this movie though, so I'm giving it probably, I'd say, oh gosh, I'm struggling, either a B- or a C+. I guess I'll land on C+, because it's not a good movie, but I enjoyed it.
Okay. And Kiko.
I'm just gonna be a curmudgeon about it. Everything was just annoying to me. Even that scene where I guess you're in her room and you see the Almost Famous posters on her wall.
I didn't even notice that.
I was like, son of a bitch. I just didn't like that. So I just thought everybody was unlikable. I thought the script never gave me anything to be fully invested in. And I'm wondering if Jocelyn would have kissed the guy at the end of the movie with that thing on his lip.
Oh yeah, the movie ends with the person like voluntarily giving themselves herpes, which is like
oral herpes. They kept saying over and over again, oral herpes, and it was kind of like, yeah, you don't have to say that. It's on his lip, like clearly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't think
that was a weird subplot for sure.
When I think of coming of age romances, I don't think of oral herpes, unfortunately.
For sure.
I'm giving this.
Think of genital.
Yeah.
I'm giving this a C-.
All right.
Drink every time Cody says genital.
All right. So that's going to do it for this week. Next week, we're going to have Michael, the Michael Jackson biopic. We're going to have Fuse, the latest film from David Mackenzie. And we're going to have Desert Warrior, which is the latest film from Rupert Wyatt, who did the first Planet of the Apes reboot.
Is that what he did? Oh wow, he hasn't been. Has he done anything since then?
Yeah, he directed a movie called The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg, and he directed a movie called Captive State in 2019.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
And those are the last two movies he's done after he did Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So if you want to reach out to us, find us wherever you get podcasts. Find us on Facebook. Find us on our YouTube channel where you can subscribe. Kiko, what's coming up on the YouTube channel here?
Yeah, I have a really cool interview that I did with director David Mackenzie for Fuse. So we can talk about the movie. We can talk about what he went through. But I mean, his Hell or High Water film is still one of my favorite modern day
God, that's
westerns.
It's such a
great
movie.
film.
Yeah, Hell or High Water is great, but if you want to watch one of my like favorite movies of like the past like 15 years, Startup is a movie that he directed right before Hell or High Water, starring Jack O'Connell and Ben Mendelsohn, and it's like a prison drama.
Oh yeah,
movie,
you talked about this
and
before.
it is incredible. Really, really, really good. That's the thing that put David Mackenzie on my radar.
Yeah, I still haven't checked it out, so I'm gonna have to.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it. Mm-mm.
Oh man,
I'll watch Startup if you watch A Prophet. You haven't seen A Prophet, have you?
I have.
Oh, you have? Isn't?
Yeah.
I gotta see
Jocelyn
both.
hasn't.
I have to see both.
Yeah. By the way, Startup 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. Just so you know. Yeah, it's
so is Paddington 2, and you haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's incredible. So cool. So interview with David Mackenzie, that's great. And then so we'll be back next week with a few more movies, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit CineSnob.net. See you next week.